What is going on, YouTube? Robo Sushi here, bringing you guys some more Digimon TCG news. This time, a little bit of a different video than normal. Instead of gameplay or deck profiles, we have the face cam. So hello to you guys who have never seen my face before, that don't know me in real life. But today, we're going to go over something very exciting. This is the second, I guess, limited and ban list for the Digimon TCG. So this will go into effect in the Japanese format for those of you who are playing in future formats for like Tabletop Simulator or something, or who are keeping up with the Japanese meta. And for us here in the States, they're going to come in waves. I'll go over that here in a second. But these will go into effect, like I said, February 1st for the Japanese format. So before we go into the new cards that were on the list, just to get a little catch up for those of you who have never seen or don't know that there's an actual limited list, or because maybe you don't play Green, because Green hasn't been seeing a bunch of play recently in the Digimon TCG. But we had a few cards originally that were limited. The first one being Argomon level 5. This Digimon is just another Digisorption Digimon. If you have, if you know of Blossomon, Blossomon's a level 5 Digisorption. Digivorption for 3, like basically Evo for free as long as you suspend a Digimon. And then this time, unlike Blossomon, has an inheritable. When attacking, you can play a level 3 Green Digimon suspended. Doesn't stop any on-play costs. I think the only reason why this card was limited, big reason at least, this ability was very good to swarm board by playing a level 3, even if it was suspended, was really, really good. And it's also not once per turn. I don't think that comes into play too much back then when it was first limited, other than maybe one or two cards like the Imperial Dramon. But this is really good now because there's even more cards that you can unsuspend with. You could technically get a few swings off with it, a few combos, but paired with the other card that is on the list, it really needed to be limited. Now I think it could technically come off the list. They still have it limited as 1, so I figured I'd still go over it. Anguamon from BT3 has the same thing, except it's yellow. It has a little bit of restriction. You have to have 3 security, but I think this card eventually could come off the list. Maybe the only reason they keep it is because to kind of help future-proof it, to keep it down from having 8 Digisorption Digimon possible with Blossomon and Argomon. But as for right now, this is going to be the only one that is limited, so you technically limited to 5, but I think the reason why it stayed on there is to future-proof the game a little bit, so... The other limited card, this card will never come off the limited list in my opinion. Mega Digimon, or Hidden Potential Discovered, 0 cost. You basically Digizorb. You can suspend one of your Digimon to reduce the evolution cost of one of your Digimon into its next evolution by 5. This could be a level 6 into a level 7, so you could go into Chaosmon or Chaosmon Valder Arm on your green Digimon. It does have to be green, which is the only kind of limiting factor, but you could reduce it to basically 1 cost, which is just absolutely incredible for just so many plays. You can continue plays with barely having to lose any memory, and there's almost no repercussion other than suspending a Digimon. This card will stay on the forbidden list or the limited list. I wouldn't be surprised if it necessarily got banned eventually because of Mega Digimon Fusion, but just because its color requirement sticks to green, I think is the reason it'll stay just limited, because it is good and it does help you when you do see it. But anyway, instead of the old cards, we'll finally go over the new cards that are coming off on the list. The first one that we're going to talk about here is Mega Digimon Fusion. This was the first card that the Digimon TCG has banned. For good reason. It's a 0 cost. 0 cost cards and 1 cost cards can be dangerous. So they have to, they got a little extra when they went with this card. I don't think they really prepared for the future proof when they made this card. So it's white. And it's generic in the fact that whenever one of your level 6 Digivolves into a level 7, you reduce the play cost or the Digivolution cost by 6, and then at the end of the turn it goes to the bottom of the deck. Most of the time we're not worried about going to the bottom of the deck, because being able to go into a level 7 for free most of the time is just really good and pushes so much advantage for you in the Digimon card game for all the level 7s. And then the real card that bumped this over is Susanomon. So Susanomon, for those of you who don't know, maybe you don't know what's going on in BT7, but this card's going to come up soon, so we're going to do a little quick education on it. This is a first Rainbow Digivolution card. It can Digivolve onto any level 6, doesn't matter what color it is, so long as it's level 6 for a play cost of, or Digivolution cost of 7, which seems really steep, but has a very impressive skill of, it has inherent security attack plus 2, so when it swings, it checks 3 security. Very good. And then when you Digivolve, you pop one of your opponent's Digimon. So it kind of helps make up for the 7. But paired with Mega Digimon Fusion, it's ridiculously good. And then, of course, the thing that really tops it up is its other effect. By placing 10 total cards that are Tamer or Hybrid in their top form from your hand or trash to the bottom of your deck, you can Digivolve this onto one of your Tamers. So this is the real big issue that comes up, because we have cards coming out in the next set, like EX01 here in the States, like, here it is, Analog Youth. This card is just, it's a generic white Tamer, and it helps put cards in the trash. You have to take a Digimon, and then the rest go to the trash. So this helps fill up trash for that play with Susanoo-amon. But because it's a white card, you can shove this into yellow hybrids or blue hybrids in the coming set, which I'll go over in a little bit, that really just, you're already going to fill the trash up with hybrids. You're going to fill the trash up with Tamers, because you're going to Digivolve those Tamers into hybrids, swing, get there to Susanoo-amon as soon as you can, do a little bit of chip damage, and then all of a sudden, this little analog boy becomes Susanoo-amon with Mega Digimon Fusion for 1 memory after the effect goes off. And then you check 3 security, and then you go into 1 more hybrid, and you swing for game. And you remove the board. So if they have a blocker, you take out the blocker, or if you just want to do it to knock out something big that's on the board, get a few extra checks in, then that's another play you can do. And this card has been running rampant in the Digimon TCG in Japan right now. Yellow hybrids and blue hybrids have run the meta, along with Jesterman, which we're going to go over in a little bit, if you can see ahead. So this card wasn't future-proofed very well, and I don't think it will ever come off the Forbidden list. It is too good. It needed to be hit. Yes, Lilith Loop kind of gets hurt by this, and Lilith Loop wasn't always a super top tier deck. I think the tier 1.5 could be tier 1, but this card really hurts it. You have to go with something like 60% win rate from the BT or from EX collection coming out soon. Which is kind of a similar case, but, you know, there's a little bit of requirements, doesn't quite reduce the play cost as much, or the Digivolution cost as much, so, you know, it's not going to be quite as busted as Mega Digimon Fusion, but this card will stay on the ban list. It needed to be hit. This is going to help us in the future. Now, this card, along with a few other cards that we're going to go over, they go into effect February 25th, so Japan's going to have all 5 of these cards that you see hit on the 1st of February. So they only have them for another 2 weeks. Well, we, on the other hand, will have them for about a month and a half. So if you want to get your Mega Digimon Fusion and the next 2 cards on the list in with your playtesting, be sure to get that done now, because here in about a month and a half, they're going to be gone or limited. So that's Mega Digimon Fusion. Busted card. Definitely needs to be hit. You're going to see it. Luckily, we won't have it in BT7, so you won't have to see some of the destruction that comes along with this card. Fortunate for some, unfortunate for others. You know, it depends on where you land on what colors you like to play. Second card, Reinforced Memory Boost. This is going to be the card that I'm going to go over some yellow hybrid stuff, because that's really what did this card in, that and security control, and the way that yellow hybrids kind of can turn into security control in the next formats. So this is a delay card. It's a memory boost, but it gives you 3 memory. That's one of the biggest parts about this card. The other part is when you play it, it's basically a Holy Wave. You know what Holy Wave does? Recovery +1. This reveals the top 2. You get to add 1 and recover 1. So you get to choose. Security control people, you already know about it. People who've played against security control, you know how bad it is when you see you reveal 2, there's a Zwart, and there's a good removal spell that they want to have in their hand. That Zwart's going right into the security. You can't do anything about it. You now have to know that that's going to come out, and then they can get 3 memory next turn, because if they have a memory tamer, or some way to gain a bunch of memory, this is another way to gain some memory. You're going to be able to play the removal spells without having to worry about passing turn. This gets really, really good with yellow hybrids, because yellow hybrids can then put the tamers in security. So unless there's a way to just trash security, you know that yellow hybrid's going to come out, or that tamer's going to come out, and it's going to be a hybrid. And that's not really something that you want to deal with as the other opposing player. So it's hard to play around this card sometimes. And like I said, it's a draw. It's hand neutral. You technically go +1. Hand neutral, you get 3 memory next turn, and then you get a recovery. It's just a really good card. It caused some issues because there's more cards that come out that are just good into security. And then, like I said, yellow hybrids can turn into security control. You can change your egg color to play a little bit of purple for when to play the Lucamon option. You can play some red, play Gaia Force, play Atomic Blaster. Just play good removal spells and just go into your yellow hybrids. It's just really good, because all yellow hybrids has to do, they're not usually worried about eggs, so you're just going to play whatever color eggs you want. That'll help solidify your gameplay. So and help out maybe a little bit more control-y. So this card being hit was definitely going to come up eventually. It's going down to 1. So it's not gone forever. So don't be too sad if you were expecting to see it for a long time. But this card paired with stuff like Jesterman coming out in the next set. This is one, again, bringing up yellow hybrids. When you Digivolve this on top of a Tamer, you can reduce its memory, reduce the evolution cost by 2. So you Digivolve it on top of Tamer for 1. But really, most of the time, you're going to Digivolve it on top of a hybrid or a Tamer. You're going to Digivolve on top of a hybrid and just get the recovery +1. Because if you Digivolve on top of a Tamer or a hybrid, you get the... Or a Digimon with a Tamer in its Digivolution cards, I should say, you reduce the memory cost by 2. And if it's got hybrid and the traits, recovery +1. So you're going to go into something like Kazemon or Zephyrmon, and then you're going to Digivolve into Jesterman for 1 for a full recovery. So being able to just get the amount of recovery, get the memory gain, it's just, it needed to be hit. I don't think Jesterman needed to be hit. Some people were complaining about this card needing to be hit in the Japanese meta, and for people who are keeping up with it here, this card helps the deck actually function properly, or else it's just Kazemon and Zephyrman, which don't quite do enough by themselves. Jesterman helps add that pressure. You can still play Susanomon. You just have to pay the memory cost. You just have to be able to time it a little bit better. And with Reinforced Memory Boost at 1, you know, I firmly believe that cards that go down to 1 need to be able to impact the game when you see them. Reinforced Memory Boost is like that. Hidden Potential Discovered. When you're playing against a green player and you see HPD hit, you know that you're going to be in trouble because the whole tide of the game can shift with some of these cards. And that's kind of what they're for. Now, if they come up too often, if there's too many good ways to find it, then that's when they need to be hit. You know, there's so many good ways to cycle into Mega Digimon Fusion that's why it needed to be hit. Even if you played it at 1, seeing it, even if you had no cards in deck, was just too good. Reinforced Memory Boost doesn't quite hit that, in my opinion, and being at 1 is kind of healthy. Still a good card. Doesn't need to go down, but it definitely did. It doesn't need to go down to 0, but it definitely need to be limited. It was a little too oppressive for several decks. So the next card on the list, this is going to be Ice Wall. So any of you people who are preparing for Nats, this is a card to look out for because, like I said, these cards don't get banned or limited until February 25th. Nationals is the first weekend of February, I believe, the 5th and the 6th. So this card's going to go around. Gabumon is very prevalent here in the English meta. There's also a few decks that you may see, a few rogue decks that you may see, you know, Old Force, Feedramon, Imperial EX cards are going to come out soon. So Ice Wall is something you got to look at. It is a generic good blue card. Every blue deck would probably shove this card in as a 4 of. 3 of bare minimum. I still think you would always run it as a 4 of. If you don't know what this card does, for 1 memory, that's the big issue here. For 1 memory, all of your opponent's Digimon gain when attacking lose 2 memory until the end of the turn. That is, there's no way to get around it. This affects things in raising. This affects if you have one of your Tamers Digivolve into a hybrid in swing. This still holds all that effect on there. If it was something like when attacking, your opponent gains 2 memory, then you could play around with something like Madoki Betamon or Terriermon, any of the Chumon, any of those things that keep your opponent from gaining memory. It could be played around, but when it's just lose 2 memory, that's very detrimental. And it being at 1, you can very easily just, if you need that last little turn to get that last little push, double Ice Wall. Then your opponent can attack. They have to. There's nothing they're gonna do. If they attack, they're gonna pass turn more than likely. The best retaliation to Ice Wall, double Ice Wall back. I mean, that's all you can really do. What can I say? And then, of course, its security effect, it's Hammer Spark out of security. He gains 2 memory. You run this with Hammer Spark, both at a 4 of, you have 8 things that they can hit in security that just pass 2 memory over. Really good card. Very, very oppressive. A lot of blue decks just forgo even ever running blockers because who needs to run blockers when I can just all of a sudden make my opponent lose memory by just attacking? Unless they have a way to gain the memory and go up a little bit more, then they're just going to have to be stuck doing a little bit of chip damage every turn that may not come out and do well for them, or they just have to try to do something else while you stall for that time. And if you have multiple of these in hand, then your opponent really can't do anything about them. Very oppressive card. Limited to 1, so when it comes up, you need to make sure you hold on to it. It's one of those cards, again, it can really help you, but being at more than 1, it was just an oppressive card. Being at 1, healthy for the environment. Personally think it'd be 2. That might just be me being a blue player, but I think 2 isn't too bad because then you can double or double Ice Wall, but then you don't always want to because you want to make sure you hold on to it, maybe to stall for another turn. So Ice Wall being limited to 1 definitely needed to be hit. Everybody was expecting this to happen. People wanted it to happen for a long time. Japan's had this card at full power for 5 months now, I believe. So, and people here in the States, here in the English meta, have been waiting for this card to be hit even before it came out. So, next card on the list. So that was it for the cards that are going to be banned and limited on the 25th of February. These next 2 cards are going to be limited on the I believe in April. They haven't given us an exact date. So in April, these are going to come up. So you can expect to see, I know a lot of people see the Savior Huckmon right here. You will still have this for 3 months, 4 months maybe, depending on when set 8 comes out. My guess is these will come into effect once set 8 releases. So the first cards we're going to go over is right here, Eisman. Not a lot of people know about Eisman yet. It's going to come out in BT7 if you haven't been keeping up with future meta. This card is very oppressive because of a few cards that get released in BT8, really, is the main thing to worry about. But even before then, so its effect is when you trash this card using one of your effects, if you have an Eisman scatter mode in the trash, you may play this card without playing its memory cost. So for those of you who do not know, Eisman Scatter Mode is a card coming out in BT7. This card says whenever it's deleted, you can draw 3, trash 2. So on deletion effects happen when the Digimon is in the graveyard, technically. So it goes to the graveyard, you get to draw 3 cards, then you get to trash 2 cards. Eisman Scatter Mode is in the graveyard, so when you trash this Eisman, you just play them. And which is already strong enough because it does gain a buff. It gains plus 2,000 on your turn for every Eisman Scatter Mode in your trash. But the real issue that came around with this card is definitely Chimeramon. And this is going to come up here in a little bit again. But Chimeramon is a DNA Digivolution Digimon. You just overlay 2 level 4s and they just become this. And then you can tuck a level 5 or lower from the trash to the bottom of this card to give it that color. To give it a other effect, but really it's just as long every color in its sources, this Digimon counts as that color. So that is the big issue. It was too easy to just go into Eisman, even if you're not going to have Chimeramon, but just swing, let your Eisman die, drop 2 Eisman, or Eisman Scatter Mode, drop 2 Eisman, and then now all of a sudden you've gone +1 in card advantage, you filled up your trash, and or you've dropped more Eisman on the field. So this card definitely needed to be limited. I'm kind of sad to see it go to 1. I think they probably could have gone away with semi-limiting it, just because Eisman Scatter Mode is still in full power, but I can definitely see why this would be would just be limited down to 1. If they did semi-limit it, you could still do the shenanigans by playing both of them, going into Chimeramon. So it's still good to have. I don't know if the card is necessarily worth always shoving in now at 1. It is good to do a 1-for-1. You do get to gain the draw and still play it and fill up your trash for 1 card. I'll probably still try to play it because it just pairs well with the combo, but it's definitely nowhere near as oppressive as when it was at full power. I know a lot of decks were also running it at 3 anyway. So Eisman, it's a card that's you're going to have it when BT7 comes out. Get your playtime in. You got like 2 months, 2.5 months of it maybe. Be sure to get your playtime in before it gets limited. Good card, but definitely needed to see this hit before BT8 officially came out. So, and the last card on the list, a lot of people were upset about this, but apparently in Japan, it's been running rampant. I've seen a whole bunch of winning lists have Jesterman at the top. Jesterman's come out, as a lot of you know, right now in BT6. It's one of the top decks. It has a very good OTK potential, albeit can brick a decent amount because you have to be able to see your pieces. But the big piece you always wanted to see to be able to get your OTK out was definitely Savior Huckmon. Savior Huckmon, a lot of you may know what it does. When you Digivolve, you can play a Sistermon from your hand without paying its memory costs. That's great and all, but a lot of times you know you're going to sit this back and raising until you can eventually push it out and then be able to have it go into a Jesterman and really trigger its big effect, the inheritable, when attacking once per turn. If you have a Digimon with Sistermon in its name in play, unsuspend this Digimon. So that's where the Jesterman would get its OTK potential. If you had something underneath it that lets you draw some cards like Biomon or Guiomon, starter deck Guiomon and EX01 Biomon, but also if you had starter deck Greymon. A lot of people were trying to find out how to, nerf Jesterman. Starter deck Greymon was one thing that people were thinking about. That card, there's not that many great level 4s currently, in my opinion. There are a few decent ones, but Greymon is just above and beyond a really just great generic level 4 for red. So hitting that didn't seem necessary. But Savior Huckmon was the key piece. That being able to restand a Jesterman was just really good with like Blade of Judgment and being able to vomit out Sistermon on the field from trash, even because Jestermon lets you play him from trash. It was just too strong to be able to gain the memory or get the blocker and then swing with the Greymon. You're doing 2 checks, and then if you've done any chip damage, that's probably all their security, and then you just go for game with something like another rookie that you may have on the field, another, one of your Sistermons that you didn't play off of Jestermon, or something like a Blitz Omni. Or even a Tamer. There's a whole bunch of plays that you could go off of, hybrid plays. So this getting limited is very unfortunate for Jestermon because this really does hurt the deck. Now, when you see this card, you're pretty much to the moon. If you have the rest of the combo, you can really do well with this card. You're just going to go back and do the generic OTK. But if you don't see it, then Jestermon has to rely on other things. Maybe Voltramon for that extra security attack +1 to get more checks in. Maybe something like a War Growlmon from the new starter decks, something along those lines. You could even play something like Megadramon, give it the extra DP. You have to find other things to work in, and since you also aren't able to spit out Sistermons as well, you might be able to limit back the Sistermon count. So as a lot of this deck can be very bricky if you don't see all the pieces, because you have to jam in the Sistermons. Well, now, as unfortunate it is for this card to go, maybe you can tone back on the Sistermon effects, maybe not have quite as many 8 to 10 or not 10 but like 6 to 8 people were putting into the decks, and maybe you could help with the consistency of the deck. You still have to fit in, but Shine Greymon does pretty well without bricking as much, because you do have good ways to make advantage of your Tamers, gain that extra memory, maybe able to still make plays. Maybe you can find something how to do that with Jestermon, make it a little bit more consistent, albeit not as strong with the OTK. You can still do the checks, you still have maybe be able to fit more Omnimon in. So it is sad to see this card go to 1. It really does hurt the deck, but I still think the deck can perform very, very well even at 1 Savior. Again, we'll mention some of the cards that really power this deck up, and I think it's the reason why it finally had to get limited. Blanc Awakened, when you play it, you can take a Blanc from your hand or trash, tuck it underneath, get recovery. So now Jestermon has access to recovery. Or you have Sistermon Seal or Sistermon Noir, which you can do the same effect. You tuck something underneath, and this time it just deletes one of your opponent's Digimon with play cost of 5. This card didn't see as much play because Jestermon, if you have the Blade of Judgment or you gain piercing, you can just go through your opponent's Digimon. You don't have to worry about that effect as much, but more so being able to shove this Sistermon Blanc Awakened in there for recovery in Jestermon was just very, very good, and being able to do it twice, that's really an issue that the deck ran into, being able to top constantly. And in Japan, it had to high roll only 1 time. You only had to see the combo. You have consistency issues, but if you see that combo 1 time, then you just move on to the next round. Japan is a best of 1 format. Here in the States, here in the North, or the English meta, we do have a best of 3 format. So you always have to run into issues like that. Consistency is key in a lot of things. There's definitely some cards that if you pull back on how many Sistermon you're playing, help with the consistency of the deck. Maybe the deck won't be able to do the OTK, but I don't think the deck's going to go away as long as people, adapt to the limit. You still play the Savior, of course. It's a good target to search off a Huckmon, but also at the same time, it was a limiting factor, and people were just trying to high roll constantly. So maybe we can dial back on the high roll and maybe get a little bit more consistency. I still think the deck will do well. So it's sad to see it go, but again, Chimeramon comes up here too, because you could just get that Savior if it ends up in the trash, maybe off security you can check. You get 2 Seals out, 2 Noirs out from the Jestermon effect, or just out in general, and then you're able to just go ahead, turn them into a Chimeramon, put the Savior underneath, and it does get Savior's inherited effect if you do have a Sistermon on the field, or you can just go into a Jestermon. It's just really good combo. I think that's the big factor as to why the deck had to eventually get hit, and I think limiting Savior is the way you limit just that deck without necessarily limiting a whole lot of red, by limiting something like Greymon or some of the other cards that really are useful to put into other decks. So but that is it for the cards that are going over the ban list. Now remember, I said the first 3 cards, Mega Digimon Fusion, Ice Wall, and Reinforced Memory Boost, we will have those cards until February 25th here in the North American English meta. So get your testing in with those. Get prepared for Nats. If you're going to play any of those cards, you will still have them for Nationals. You're not gonna have them when BT7 rolls around. So you will have some of them going to 1, Ice Wall, Reinforce, Mega Digimon Fusion going to 0, and then we have until April 2022, April of this year, to be able to play around with Eisman and Savior. So if you're still a Jesterman player, you want to try to get tops, you want to try to find a way, you still want to run that full power with Savior, go ahead, run those at 4. You have until April, until probably about BT8 comes out would be my speculation, and just get your testing in, get your playtime in before those get limited as well. Good decks, but I definitely need some of them need to be hit. The consistency of some of those cards is really, really too good. Kind of oppressive. Could really change some decks up and just make them get closer and closer to that tier 0. We haven't quite hit any tier 0 decks in Digimon, but you definitely don't want that to happen. Because then it gets stale. We end up with another meta like Lord Nightmon, where that's the only deck we see for 4 months. But anyway, that'll be it for today's video, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you have any other thoughts on other cards that you thought should have been on the Forbidden Unlimited list, any cards that do you think it's unfair that some of these cards got hit on the list? Do you think Argamon should have come back at 3 or 4 or something like that? Leave those comments down in the comment section below, and just let me know about some other cards that you may want to see limited in the future. Personally, Lord Nightmon still needs to get hit. I know nobody plays the deck. Nightmon still needs to get hit, drop down to 1. That would make me very much happy, but that's just because I'm salty because we were stuck in that format for so long. But anyway, guys, until next time, stay tuned to the channel for more Digimon TCG content, and I'll see you guys for more gameplay, deck profiles, and news videos in the future. And until next time, guys, see you later.